I just got vaccinated for polio. Okay. No, but what are we working with here? Is this a Pfizer crowd? What's happening? Okay, great. You guys don't support small business? That's nice. Good. Moderna people? Nice, great. I got both, so I feel great. I can't see anything, but I don't know. I just wish I had some J&J confidence, though. Don't you? They got a lot of swag. Look at this guy. He's on his way to the hospital. It's crazy. You know what I mean? Like they have a lot of confidence. Moderna came out there like, we're 94%. Pfizer's like, we're 95. J&J rolled out of bed 2 months later like, 41, baby, what's up? 35 in some studies. C-, we still technically pass the class. We make Band-Aids, that's the second half of the vaccine. Pretty sure we can do the first half. Their whole thing was like, we're just one shot. Who doesn't want one shot? Everyone was like, we're cool with 2 shots. Do you think at any point they called Pfizer this year and they were like, hey, are you guys doing 2 shots? Should we do another one? At this point, they're like the kid in class who finishes the test early and is very confident, but doesn't know there's a back page, right? I'll see you guys at recess. Oh no! I've gone completely insane the last 18 months. Anybody else? Yeah. I want us, thank you, yeah. A couple crazy people in the front, good. I want us all to stop pretending like we haven't lost our minds, right? That was the craziest thing that's ever happened to anybody. I see people walking around New York like everything's normal. People are just glassy-eyed walking down the street like, I just had brunch in a plastic bubble in the bike lane. Everything is normal. I did this before. Oh yeah, the rest of the world's on fire. I experienced true loneliness the last 18 months. My actual circle of friends is much smaller than I thought it was. But I just had an omelet in the middle of the street. Oh yeah, I'm my old self again. I got my temperature taken with a laser. And then I had wings in the prison they put Magneto in. Put that guy in a plastic prison. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. I missed the part of the pandemic where corporations were emailing me saying they were on my side. Wasn't that nice? That was a nice couple of months. Like, thank you for the support, Chipotle. But I'd like you to focus on the fact that I throw up every time I eat your food. We give Chipotle too long of a leash as a country, don't we? We need to stop. We need to pull it back a little bit. Remember when all their lettuce was poison for a year? All of it. The government was like, don't eat there. We were like, it's fine. I like their cold metal tables bolted into the ground. I like eating at Tin Man's apartment. We've had a really rough year, you know? We have. You can tell how rough of a year it's been by how popular alcoholic seltzer has become. You know what I mean? We reached a low point as a society where we're just like, I don't care anymore. Put vodka in the water, all right? For God's sake, put heroin in my Cobb salad. Leave me alone. It feels crazy to live in a time of consequence, doesn't it? You ever think about that? Like this year and last year, people are going to talk about this forever. It's too much pressure for me, right? I miss simpler times. Like, remember 2014? What were we even doing back then? What happened? Pharrell had that big hat? There were 2 popes for a little while? Remember that? People forget the Pope was like, yeah, listen, I don't want to be the Pope anymore. So I think that's it. I wish we could go back there. I was talking to my neighbor. He's a big conspiracy theorist. A lot of conspiracies being tossed around right now. You guys into that? How do we feel?
Yeah.
Yeah? All right? In person? All right? We didn't land on the moon! I was talking to him. He's a flat earther. Is anybody a flat earther here? All right, I don't know why you would identify yourself, but... Right here, let's talk. I want to have a dialogue with you. I was talking to him. He was like, Luke, I think the earth is flat. Sorry if that's not politically correct. I was like, no, that's just regular incorrect, right? You can't just say a crazy conspiracy theory. Like, I don't think Ohio is real. Sorry if that offends you. Yeah, the sun's a big light bulb created by the CIA to control our minds. Are you triggered, lib? Just did a show in the South. Love the South. Anybody here from the South? I love the way you guys have really weird names for your grandparents. Isn't that weird? Like, you ever talk to... I was talking to my friend from Texas. He was like, yeah, we had a great Christmas. I hung out with me, Mom, and Beam Bomb. Really fun. I don't know what that is. Don't assume I know what you're talking... Oh, I finally got vaccinated. I can finally hug Moo Moo and Jam Pappy. Really good. Oh, yeah, Moo Moo, Jam Pappy on one side, then skew on the other side. Okay. That's very dumb. I think I'm getting dumber every day. Does anyone else feel that way? About me right now? Okay. Thank you. Yes. You're dumb. Okay, good. Thank you. I am getting dumber. I used to be very smart. I was a very smart baby. Okay? I know, it's a weird thing to brag about. I was a smart baby. I could talk when I was 6 months old. All right, very impressive. Parents in the room, you know, that's impressive. I couldn't walk until I was 2 years old. So there was a year and a half of my life where I was just posted up against a wall like, oh no, I can't move. Could I just get a cup of coffee? That'd be great. Thank you so much. Yes, and the New York Times, please. Goo goo gaga. Thank you. Do you know how unsettling it is to walk into a room and see an infant upright in a bassinet like, hi, how are you? How's it going? Nice to see you. How you doing? Just breastfeeding like, can't seem to quit this stuff. What are you going to do? 5 o'clock somewhere. Get in here. Thank you guys very much. My name's Mones.